So yesterday, we spoke about Vrindavan. That in Vrindavan, everything run by Radharani, and people say, "Hey, Radhe, 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 Radhe," which is totally opposite of the mood of our Guru Varga. And it says evam paramparam praptam, which means due to course of time, spiritual knowledge get dissolved. This is the natural process. There's a game of one speaking to whisper to ear of somebody else. So if people whisper same thing, on the end of the word become different. So that means through disciplic succession, also knowledge can be lost. That's actually the real second meaning of Krishna's speaking in Gita. However, I listened today Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was very interesting because after our Gurudev left the world and he actually had a will, everyone has his own understanding of the will, according to his own realization, position, and relationship with others. So as Acharya Bork never worked because it was never same understanding. But there are different gurus, different disciples, there are followers of this Maharaj, that Maharaj, another Maharaj, and then obviously someone like Srila Govinda Maharaj or someone like Prabhupada or something like Guru Maharaj, and Guru Maharaj I wouldn't even think factor because he dealt with small group of people. Govinda Maharaj, with his big heart, went all over the world and deal with the different kind of people, like one of the Prabhupada disciples group, which is your relatives, Janardana Maharaj, Goswami Maharaj. That's like a worshipable group of people with us. Then with some like us, his disciples, who's, now already not very young people and have their own followers and disciples. So as this has happened, distribution happened, obviously everyone accept Krishna consciousness according to his inner necessity, according to his understanding, according to his connection. Then the question is how to understand it. And today I've been listening to Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter which describes the tree of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he's talking about Vakreshwar Pandit and Shivananda Sain, and obviously the main branch Nityananda, but from him there's branches and sub-branches. So when you really look at the tree, it makes a lot of sense, because the tree is not just, the tree could split in 2 or 3 main branches, all that's coming from one root, but also you see there are different branches and sub-branches coming out of tree, and some of that branches are life-giving and producing more. Some of that branches are ending, but that doesn't mean that the tree is end. If some branch of tree become dry and got cut off or fell apart, the tree continue his existence because it's it goes in different ways. So this is the way for us to understand how Krishna consciousness will work. So it's always guru-disciple, it's always heart-to-heart transaction. It's not like Christianity or Islam, because it's not a political or a superficial idea. It's a consciousness, So consciousness has neurons. Neurons means exchange, and some lines are going towards a particular understanding, and some fruits are hanging low. Some fruits are some branches start giving flowers. Some branches, they're just there to maintain the tree. But so it gives me a lot of answer for what my internal questions are. Because in this very difficult time for us, in absence of Srila, Govinda Maharaj, we should really think, well, who is the people that will lead our community? And we have some great preachers, great philosophers, then also we have necessity of connect with everyday people, with their needs, with their problems, with their inquiries, and pretty much give them very general but loving, affectionate service as Srila Govinda Maharaj have done. Because Srila Govinda Maharaj never held us by philosophy. It was not his thing. He held us by the heart. And of course, time to time, for our own fortune, he would give some very deep understanding of Krishna consciousness, which most of us couldn't even understand at the time, and probably will never, or will take billions of births or billions of births to get that in a very clear, deep way. And obviously somebody like Goswami Maharaj, whose interest only in Guru Maharaj's philosophy and, you know, extracting his ideas, it will take somebody to evolve to that level of understanding of Krishna consciousness. Meanwhile, we have, you know, followers from China. Their unique information that Krishna has father, mother. You know, that's like, hey, Krishna has father, mother, yes. But still, connecting with Krishna consciousness, connecting with devotees, I see how they're progressing. See, because it would appear to be, oh, you have to be a very smart person and read a lot of book. But like Lilavati, she's here. Sometimes she would come to my lecture and I would give in Russian and she would stay like an hour. And I couldn't stand myself for an hour. Like, I couldn't stand certain devotees, even if I understand what they're speaking. But I think why she's not getting any understanding, but she's present in the lecture. And I said to her, what makes you be here? And she said, well, I'm catching the vibration, the energy, the chi. Okay, that's amazing, because see, Krishna consciousness, it's not, as Govinda Maharaj say, heart-to-heart transaction. So one time when my first preaching tour was in Ukraine, in Zaporozhye, which is now taken over by Russian army. It's a beautiful town which is famous for its own manufacturing of helicopters. Soviet time was big industrial plant. It was never the cultural plant, however. You know, it was not famous for like Petersburg or Moscow, for the theaters. But it's a big town and a lot of good people living there on the river. You know, it's kind of like something like Austin. So it's hard to call this person devotee, but my first follower called me up, and he had esoteric bookshop. So he was super impressed that sannyasi is coming to town. He couldn't figure out that I become sannyasi like yesterday. He didn't know the details. He thought I'm some kind of exalted soul. So he booked me the chess club. And when I came there, I said, so what's the time for the lectures? And he said, I book it from 11 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. And I said, geez. And I said, show me the poster. And he advertised like such and such Swami will be speaking there from 11 till 11. And the program is like all day. Said, oh my God. And, you know, I thought no one will join, but believe it or not, I had like more than that. Like I had maybe 20, 30 people at 11 in the morning. Then I started to represent the spiritual things, and it took 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And by the time it was 11, I was pretty much done. And some people stay halfway, some people stayed 1 hour. Some people came, eat something, come back, visit. And so it happened to be that they brought their friends, somebody left. You know, it's all depending what people, what this advertising was, I'm not sure, but the people came. So one old babushka, maybe second day, she came and she sat in front of me and she fell asleep. So she would come every day for my lecture because it was like Saptaha, 7 days. And she would look at me and within 15 to 20 minutes fell sleeping. And she was maybe in her 80s or something. So on the very last moment I said, well, you've been coming here regularly. I'd like to say, what was inspiration for you to come? And she's like, oh, I saw you in doctor-like dress. I thought you were a doctor. because I was a sannyasi dress, like, to her, like a doctor dress. And she said, and I came in and I had a chronic disease I wasn't able to sleep for 20 years. I had internal inspiration to come, and within 15 minutes I fell asleep and I slept all through the lecture. And I wake up and I felt amazing. So I understood you some kind of a healer exercise, so I started coming on a daily basis. I even called my friends. I don't know if they came or not. And by the way, she's from Zaporozhye. She knows the place. Yes, yes. It's in the very central main street. But the amazing part of that connection with Krishna consciousness, she was completely unconscious and coming to a place without knowing what she would be exposed. And from the very first minute, she got benefit. There was one case with Siddhanti Maharaj when we were traveling and preaching together, and I was very determined to go, because when I took sannyas, I couldn't be around my wife, my kids in Moscow or Petersburg. I just had to I had to go, I was determined to go somewhere else where ideally if I can die, it's fine. Because it's a difficult moment when you're leaving everything. So you have to cut all your attachments. So you're on the road. So some devotees invite us to Petrozavodsk, which is a place near Finland. It's more and more towards Nordway, the Murmansk. I was there in army. Then Siddhanti Maharaj, he said, I can't tolerate this cold, minus 35. It was severe, Russian north winter, not Russian south. It was really cold. And he said, I don't think I can make it. Get me a ticket back to Petersburg. I wait for you in Petersburg. I said, okay, I'll go by myself. No problem, don't worry. Then he said, no, I think I have to go with you. I cannot drop you. Then Siddhanti Maharaj changed his mind maybe 100 times. So finally I bought him ticket and I said to devotees, okay, just about the same time, one train goes back to Petersburg, one train goes more north, more cold, more dark, because it's a polar night. And I thought, well, thanks God, Siddhanti Maharaj is coming back to Petersburg, because it's very difficult to deal with his mind, flickering mind every 5 minutes. As soon as trains start moving, I heard Siddhanti Maharaj's voice. He just jumped out of that Petersburg train and jumped into my train. I said, oh my God, you don't even have a ticket. Okay, don't worry, pay some cash. That time you could do I can pay some cash to people. Your seat was packed. You sit with me on the seat. And interestingly, one woman came in and she spoke to us, and she wants to commit suicide. And after being with us on that train ride, it's like basically train to hell, going more north. But I was there in army, I knew what it is. I knew the place. I was there. I was sentenced there in a military jail. I was this place, I knew very well.
What place was that?
Murmansk. So there was a big hotel, and so we had an advanced guy who would come and he would place little posters in little minivans. It's called a taxi. It was micro. It's within Russia and Ukraine, it's very famous micro transportation where they have these minivans with 14, 16 seats. They're traveling and let you out where you want, and you pay something. So we would advertise, and this kind of this time was no internet, nothing. It was just going, sticking bills, posters on the streets. So then, as we joined to Murmansk, I said to Siddhanti Maharaj, don't worry, I know this place. And Bimal, the advanced guy, he already rent some apartment for us. There was places you can rent by day, an apartment. So we had an apartment, and we had this hotel where we placed the program. So I said, let's do like Harinam. So we started doing Harinam in Murmansk. And that was the moment when we took Santa Claus hats and with dandas made the pictures with reindeers. Because there were some people staying with the reindeers, we paid them a little something, you can take a picture with a reindeer. So when Gurudev spoke with one man who done business in Russia, the Indian guy, like, very savvy Calcutta guy, he said, oh, have you been there? He says, yes, I've been there. I've been in Moscow, I've been in Petersburg. Gurudev, like, have you been in North? He said, yes, I've been in North. Gurudev said, have you seen reindeer of the North? He said, no, I haven't seen it. Oh, no, he said, yes, I have seen reindeer. He said, have you seen sannyasi on reindeer? That Indian guy said, no, I haven't seen that. So Gurudev showed that picture. So in his album, there was a picture of me and Siddhantimar sitting on 2 reindeers with a Santa Claus hats and carried the danda. So when we were doing Harinam, somebody come and see us chanting and give us the flowers. I was like, wow, what does that mean? Then we went on the street chanting Harinam, and one old woman stopped us. She's maybe in her 90s. And she's like, stop. Please tell me what you are doing. I said, we're praying. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. She said, oh, then I've been waiting for you. I said, why? She said, because the angel came to me in a dream and told me that I will come down from my apartment on the street. And she said, I haven't coming down from my apartment. I'm 90 years old, like, almost like dying tomorrow. She said, I was told by angel in a dream that if I come down on the street, I will receive something super important. Then we chant Hare Krishna with her, we give her the flowers and tell her, like, this is the prayer. And she's like, okay, I understand, I'm ready to meet God. I think she like die next day or something, we never see her. But she was technically connected with the holy name and had an auspicious connection. Which tells me that, wow, miracles happen. Suddenly you have women that in live drama, thinking of committing suicide, stay with you a couple hours, speak about God, Krishna, and then she said, okay, now I have a hope. And she's like, okay, Bhagavad Gita, and she's like, or this old, like, when you are surrendered to Krishna, and interestingly, one time Gurudev said about one sannyasi, at this point he's fully surrendered to me. At this point. I thought, why Gurudev say that? But then later I understood why. So that means, are you always surrender soul, or you surrender at the moment? But if some surrender, some self-giving to divine wave is happening, then there's some miracles going to happen, and the only obstacle, your own ego. Just like, analyzing things happens around me, and I'm thinking, and my ego tells me one thing, but my internal heart tells me, well, when something happens with you, that has nothing to do with external circumstance. That might be favorable or not. It has to be with you, with your own. Remember, Guru Maharaj said religion is proper adjustment. So, being a preacher, a guru, normally you adjust other people. It's your job to adjust others. But Guru Maharaj said religion is proper adjustment, which means everyone has to be adjusted, including yourself. So it's an interesting thing when I see how divine will play to beginning, middle, and end. And what would appear to be in the beginning very unknown and almost crazy, destructive, would play on the end very well by Krishna's will. And what would be some, kind of a illusionary perception on very like a general level of your own imagination wouldn't work. Like, so in other words, it's very difficult to think, oh, I can change the world, which everybody wants to do. So Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, he said, you cannot change the wind, but you can change the sail of your ship. That you can change. The wind is going to blow this way or left, right, south, straight, but you have to always adjust your sail so that whatever, even the negative angle of the wind, with the proper sail angle, can take you forward in your progress. And believe it or not, the best movement of the ship is going against the current. But you can't just go straight. You have to take a little angle here, a little angle there. So that means if you really want like the sweet, nice wind always blowing your ass, it's not going to happen because you're in the ocean. Then you have to go wrong direction. But if you do have a destination, that's not going to happen. Maybe sometimes that favorable wind will move you towards the direction, but you should not expect always work for yourself. So when we look at someone's horoscope, that's normally seeing by stars. Because sometimes you have the period of success and flourishing, sometimes the period to pay the bills and pay your karmic debts, and that's very clear in Jyotish. But then the question becomes, do I really have any free will, or does everything happens according to destiny, or there's some of my free will in that occasion? So, because like certain things, like for instance, death of Karna. If you look at the Karna, then you know he was one of the Pandavas. And not only one of the Pandavas, he was the first, you can consider the senior brother who should be the guy in charge of the family. And his main person that he competed with was Arjuna. And his birth was unique because his mother was granted mantra by which she could apply that mantra, any demigod would appear. So when she did the mantra, she, part of that mantra, you have to add the name of that demigod. Then she did by accident. Then the son of God came, the sun came, Surya. And she's like, oh, Hare Krishna. And Surya said, normally when I've been called. And she's like, I don't think I'm ready for it. She said, well, don't worry, the baby was going to come out of your ear. Which means our exchange will be divine. And then what certain acharyas at Madhva in his Satrayani Tika explain, when like we have avesha in our children, like father, mother, grandfather in the child, the Surya said, don't think I'm just coming here for sexual exchange. I pretty much have that opportunity on higher planets. I'm coming here to fulfill destiny. So if you think you're chanting this mantra accidentally, you're wrong. You have to deliver the child, which will be part of something very unique. That you'll say, what is that? Because everybody now knows Avadhut Maharaj is a conspiracy theorist, but not everybody knows that conspiracy theory is coming from acharyas, because they say the earth, it's very important, they say the earth is always the battlefield ground of evil and good. Sometimes the battlefield happens on a higher planetary system, but normally it does happen on earth. That's why Ram comes here, Krishna comes here, and Krishna saying in Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavanti paritranaya sadhana vinashaya dushkritam. So where's that dushkrits? They're coming from all over the universe. And also when that battlefield of conspiracy, because it appeared to be the kingdom of this and that, but Madhva say, no, don't think like this. Don't think it's two ancient kingdoms fight, because then you limit to time, place, and circumstance. What you should understand, it's not a historical or mythical occasion. It's the divine evil and divine meet in battlefield on planet Earth, where Krishna descends himself, and this is by his will. So through the whole universe, like for instance Duryodhana, he was disciple of Balaram because he's got blessing of Ananta Shesh to become Duryodhana in this battlefield. So he was a king of Navata Kavachas. So, and you know, so all these beings, like you say, Shakuni was demon, his guru was demon. His guru was Brahman Kanaka, was demon. So their demons came and they took form of humans. And they played their own politics. They had their own vision of how they want to run things, but they were demons. You know, Dushasana, Duryodhana, 100 sons. And they were meant to be killed. However, there's eternal fight going on between the gods. So Vali were killed by Ramachandra. He had the mala, the Surya mala that he gave to Sugriv. He was also Karna in previous life. So Vali is coming as karma, next reincarnation. And coming, and even in this life he should be killed again. But how he would get killed, that's I will tell a little bit later. So that first you have to understand divine conspiracy. So Ram Lila, Krishna Lila, Gaur Lila, all connected. Like Hanuman in Ram Lila, he's become a Bhima Sen. In Krishna Lila, he become Murari Gupta. In Gaur Lila, same identity, and end of the story, he's Vayu Pavana, his expansion of Vayu Pavana, or Haridas Thakur, Brahma, you know. So they put there Avesh, because otherwise you think, oh, Haridas, Brahma, how is that possible? Brahma is there, Haridas is here. Putting Avesh, putting himself, just like you're putting yourself into your child, that's what call Brahma Haridas. Or sometimes they would say, oh, in this person, Prahlad Maharaj, or like Advaita Acharya, he's known to Mahavishnu or Sadashiva. But Mahavishnu and Sadashiva, like at the time of creation, Mahavishnu and Sadashiva become joined with Maya Mahatattva. So it's pretty much when Vishnu look at Maya, he become Sadashiva. When he look at Krishna, he is Mahavishnu. So a certain function, because Mahavishnu does not interact in Maya. So Maya is the business of Shiva. So just like when you look at beautiful women and you can have a sexual exchange by your eyes, but Vishnu never be under control of Maya. So his glimpse at Maya becomes Shiva. And that glimpse have enough male potency to impregnate the Maya with all the living beings. But really all the living beings coming from, you know, Sankarshan, or who is expansion of Mahavishnu. But the process in the material world must be, you know, the virtual reality must done in a particular way, so that we can understand all these divine gods and goddesses like Parvati, Draupadi. She had five goddesses in her. That's why she's the most chaste women. So each of the goddesses share a different husband, which is a different demigod. So, but all these 5 goddesses was cursed by Brahma, but due to their pleasing, oh, please don't separate us. He said, okay, in the worldly dealing, you'll become one, but you become the most chaste, because you really will connect you with your husbands. Then, from that point of view, Hanuman and Bhim and Murari Gupta connect with Pavan Vayu, who again has 24 different Vayus, etc. So it's a complex thing. It's known to Acharyas. It's not like this kind of Mahabharata. Nobody will explain you, but you know, great Acharyas, that's their thing, is to explain you who is who, why. And then it makes a lot of sense for eternal conspiracy that every lila connected. So somebody in one life, like Vali, has presence as Karna, but again, when Karna coming to Parashuram, because his name is before Radheya, and his so-called son Sutta of Radha, Radha is the charioteer. And charioteer is lower than Kshatriya, because he ran the chariot, he ran the horses. He's also fighting, but his main thing is to run the horses. So he's been trained to run the horses. But when his father look at him, he never has interest in horses. He's interested in bow and fighting, bow, arrow. And suddenly he's leaving his house unsatisfied and going to Parashuram. And Parashuram say, "Oh, my child, who are you?" He said, "I'm the son of a Brahmana," because he knows Parashuram will not accept. "Okay, then I will accept you." Then finally Indra think, well, if I don't adjust Karna right now, he might be able to kill Arjuna. Then Indra takes form of worm, and when Parashuram is very tired and sleeping, the Indra beat Karna's lap because he's sleeping on Karna's lap and piercing through his leg and biting Parashuram in the head with blood. And Parashuram wake up like, "Oh my God, somebody bite me." And then he look, Karna has whole leg and like bleeding. And he said, "Well, what happened?" And then he see that worm, which also, that worm actually was sun god charioteer demon, Cheta and Pracheta, they're sitting on the chariot, little demon figures. So he was cursed by becoming a worm for doing something, some kind of aparat. So that demigod become a worm and pierce through and bite Parashuram, but Parashuram is Supreme Lord himself. He's like, "Okay, you are tolerating so much pain. That is not possible for Brahmana. Only Kshatriya has quality to tolerate pain." It says in Bhagavatam, Brahmanas by nature, they have very explosive nature, and then they will be pacified. So the Kshatriya is different. They never have an explosive nature, but internally they have big fire, they will never forget things. That is the quality of Kshatriya. That part of Bhagavad is mentioned about Dhruva. When Dhruva doing something, then it says, well, he's a Kshatriya. So his nature is to accept challenge. That's why Yudhishthira, he couldn't deny challenge of dice game, although he knows it's full of cheating, but just couldn't do it because somebody explored his Kshatriya nature, and Kshatriya nature is comparative. Okay, let's compete, because Kshatriyas are about competition. Brahmanas are different. According to Shastras, Brahmana live by what he's been giving. See, that's why Brahmana, he's a good advisor, but not a good businessman. And Brahmana, he be always seduced by donation. That's why to take is to be seduced. And therefore Drona, being a Brahmana, wouldn't want to be doing that. Because he knew if I start accepting money from the kings, then I have to play the game of the king. But when Ashwatthama born, Ashwatthama was his son. He's also partial expansion of Shiva. But that time Drona, who was a schoolmate of Parashurama, they fight together, practice together, got married, and his wife understood, I'm marrying a Brahmana who's never going to do any work. Then she had to think how to maintain family. They were so poor they didn't have a cow. So when Ashwatthama grew a little bit, he wants the mother's milk, and she had no milk. She had to take a rice powder, milk with water, and give it to Ashwatthama as milk. And Ashwatthama would be drinking that milk powder, like almond. What kind of milk would you like? The almond, or yes, this vegan milk he would be drinking. Some people would be very happy, very excited. But one day when he was playing with the kids, he went to somebody's house, and their mother said, "Okay, kids, I'll give you some milk." So she had a cow. She gave them cups of real milk. So he's tasting the real milk. I've never tasted such a beautiful substance. I'm drinking milk every day. So he came to mother and said, "Mother, can I have some milk?" And so she's like, "Okay, here's milk." He said, "Mother, what did you do to me? Why did you lie to me?" The mother started crying. She said, you don't understand who is your father. He was one of the most brilliant men, but he will never be corrupt by serving the low kshatriyas. He will never serve the low kshatriyas. Then when Drona came back and he saw his wife crying, the cup of milk, and he discovered, then he said, it's like so much painful. So he thought, I have to go to my friend Bhishma, who I used to practice martial arts with, and I just got to get a job. And as he'd been approaching the Hastinapur, he knew the colliery, the fighting school where they practice, and he saw Pandavas, and there was some divine revelation. They lost their play ball in a well, all dry well. So they all look at the well. They have no rope, nothing. How to get to the well? How to get that ball? And Drona, he understood. Okay, these are the Rajas, Rajaputras, the princes. I have to excite them. So he said, "Oh, my dear fellers, what are you looking for?" They said, "Oh, we lost the ball. We don't know how to. We don't have a rope. We cannot go there." He said, "Isn't that you look like the warriors, the Kshatriyas?" They said, "Yes, we are." Then the Kshatriya, he can fight with anything. He's in any circumstance. He will manage. He said, "Yes, but how to manage, we don't know." Said, "Okay, look." And he see like kusha grass, dry kusha grass. So he take blade of kusha grass, and he's like, "Okay." And he, one kusha grass, pierced the bowl. And he took another kusha grass, pierced on that kusha grass, pierced another one. So he made a rope by which he pulled up the bowl from the well. And they were so impressed, they couldn't believe that there was such a person. And they said, like, "Who are you?" He said, "You go see your grandfather, you tell some of his old friend, you tell him what that old friend did." So they went to grandfather Bhishma, and they said, "Wow, we met this amazing Brahmana who's like..." Then Bhishma understood. Oh, this must be Drona. So he came to receive the Drona and embrace Drona. He said, at any moment, you are my friend, and I'll take care of you. I know you have a family, and if you're willing to be the Rajguru, we feel that these kids need to be raised as great heroes, and you're the man. So Drona took the job, but when Draupadi were completely humiliated by Duryodhana and Dushasana, neither Bhishma or Drona could say anything. They were like, when Draupadi told them, "You must be the people who follow the Dharma. Do you think that's how you treat? You know what happens, that this Duryodhana, wretched with Shakuni, cheat my husbands, and by cheating socket them to the game and win our kingdom, our weapons, and enslave them and made me slave. And now they want to take off my clothes. Is that happened in front of you and you were sitting quiet? So that you can understand, it's not only Acharya board or somebody else. Certain people can be sitting quiet, just like right now in the United Nations or Russian Parliament, or because people know something very wrong is going on in the world. But because of their corruption and fear of the self-preservation, see, that's why you need to understand the root cause of conspiracy. Otherwise, you become superficial conspiracy. You think, because conspiracy is not what most people think. It's to understand the divine nature, the human nature, and why bad things happen in this world in presence of the whole society. That's called conspiracy, actually. Yes, because like if somebody getting certain medical procedures and certain people make trillions of dollars, and you know, what do they care about you when they care about themselves? But everybody else sit quiet because somebody get paid, somebody told you're going to lose your job, and somebody who like say, wait a minute, like even Drupadi had to scream in front of all these great heroes, and none of them moved his hand to help this beautiful, powerful, and honest woman. Then she obviously closed her eyes and she started praying to Krishna. And Krishna sent her endless sari. So that means sometimes you think, oh, there are people that would appreciate your position and they will take your side. But if you really look at Mahabharata, if you really look at the history of human dealing and relations and politics, if people would live by the honor and by the heart, 99% of what happens in the world would never happen. So great acharyas, they explain the reason in Mahabharata great heroes died, two reasons. Number one group of heroes were demons. Although they were great kings, they were demons. And in the presence of Krishna, they wouldn't want to recognize Krishna. But then the question would be why the great spiritual heroes died, the proper people that would follow the Dharma in heart. And here's the answer. If they would not be removed by death from this world, Kali Yuga would never happen. If Maharaj Parikshit would not be cursed and descend this world, they would not let this bullshit happen. They would not let these things happen the way that they are. Do you understand? Because they're the real people of the truth. They would look at the situation and say, no, I can't accept this. But to remove this kind of people, then you enter a world of chaos, which means democracy. Remember, Bhagavatam is very clearly about kingship, which means like an ideal leader. Bhagavat never supported democracy. In fact, that's a conclusion of Bhagavat. But to draw the proper meaning of Bhagavat is not just enough to understand what Bhagavat is. Because Bhagavat deals with history of the humankind, with the creations, the mystic yoga. So, because it's the Mahapurana, it's the best of books. And partially it's starting with Mahabharata. But you would say, why is that a certain part of Bhagavat mention certain aspect of Mahabharata, which if you don't know Mahabharata, you won't understand what Bhagavat talks about. Because it mentions departure of Pandavas to the Himalayas where they died. And first died Drupadi. And only Maharaj Yudhishthira was claimed, he was the only person alone. And he went, it's another story, but the Bhagavat set up the mood of separation. Because it begins with explanation that at certain points, the Pandavas, they just understood the Lord left this world. And they lost every interest to their own kingdom, to the ruling ship, to they lost all kind of interest. It would appear to be they were excited about ruling the kingdom and be the kings and rule even with justice. But the way Bhagavats bring its own part is that they have no interest because Krishna is no longer here. So if Krishna is no longer here, what is my interest in wealth, position? And obviously they want to establish Maharaj Parikshit and the great succession. But you can see even in that course as gradually went and Kali Yuga took over. So when there's no enough light, there'll be dark coming. When there's no fresh cleaning of the kitchen or bathroom, there'll be cockroaches and things come naturally. So when lack of Krishna consciousness, there'll be doubts and quarrels and misunderstandings due to the nature of this world. So remember, we live in a world that has particular nature, and that nature of the world will manifest itself through certain environment. But Guru Maharaj said environment is friendly. Don't blame the environment, because Maharaj Parikshit, he didn't say, oh, I was cursed, and according to tantric power, every mantra can be stopped. Actually, it says in Mrityu Tantra, where the mantra is to kill, the instruction is there. It says every mantra, if it's giving to, first it says you cannot use this to devotees. It's not even in Tantras by Shiva. Second, it says, if person more powerful than you, this mantra will come back to you. So then you have to understand who you're dealing with the challenge. If you use this for saints, that will destroy you. But if this person that you're trying to destroy with that mantra has more mystic power or more Shakti, more Tejas, Ojas than you, that will come back to you. Number one. Number two, it says every mantra can be construct. That's why when the son of Brahmana cursed Maharaj Parikshit, the other Brahmana said, well, yes, he recited the mantra to curse you and you'll be killed in 7 days, but through our tantric power, we can create another mantra that same curse will come back to him. So then Maharaj Parikshit said, so I offend his father, that's my guilt, so now you want me to kill his son. He said, I'm not going to do that. Then you will have to die. He said, well, he's just a child. For the sake of the kingdom, the life of one citizen. He said, yes, that might be truth, but not within my thing. I don't want to be cause of trouble to spiritual Brahminical society, because if the society will not be functioning, then the world is going to the end. Number one. Number two, I cannot be cause of any injustice, even if it's my personal injustice. I have to pay for it. Then okay, then you should be prepared to die. And he said, yes. If somebody has to die, what would be most beneficial? And then different advice has been given by different rishis and munis, but sadly everybody would want to hear what Shukadev would say, because he appeared to be liberated soul, which already evolved to the level of liberation. So let's hear from liberation group, what do they think? And what we know is Nama Sankirtana Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam. So going to the world of Sankirtan and chanting holy names of Krishna. Therefore, it's extra beneficial to do this at time of Kartik. And next to us is Radha Damodar Mandir, which it's amazing to think sometimes that what we've been giving from our gurus, because certain people say, well, Chaitanya Saraswat Mad is philosophy of Guru Maharaj. But I think it's philosophy of Guru Maharaj, it's the temples of Navadvip and Vrindavan, it's the holy places, it's the deities, it's the devotees. It's not just the books or philosophy. Because philosophy has to be applied into devotees, the community. You know what I'm trying to say? Yes. If you just have the philosophy, maybe you can convert others, but eventually, Krishna say, myself, the Vyasas and the spoon, the Brahmana, which means it's not just book or it's not just ideas, because ideas without fulfillment, what is their price? There are so many ideas and execution. That's why we have a theory and practice. So in theory, we're all divine saints. In practice, it's revealing our pants normally in a very short time. So in theory, we're clean, but in practice, things going a little smelly. So, because otherwise, if we just talk about theory without putting this theory in everyday practice in our life, we could be, a bunch of guys who watch TV and talk about, war and, have the rifles on their couch, but when the time comes to defend your country, and that's what happens right now. So I just spoke today to one guy who's used to be a big mafia guy, and he joined one of our festivals in Kiev. And he likes the devotees, but he's like, you can say his face. I mean, I can sense those kind of people. He's from like hardcore criminal environment. And I preached to him, and he really likes devotees. He's been in jail. He's got some physical problems. I said, well, try this Ayurvedic stuff. I'm trying to and he really liked one of our devotees named Arjun, who's a Russian devotee. And he called me, because Arjun stuck in the airport. He tried to flee from Ukraine to India, and stuck in the airport. Finally, through Ami seemed to help, he's got on the right plane. But Arjun called this guy, and this guy right now fighting. He's in the fighting lines. And he called me up. I said, oh, how are you doing? He said, well, fighting line. And he told me, we got a, he said, it's so funny, we have to kill a lot of people because all these Russians that coming, they don't know how to fight. So we just, but he's a kind of a guy who can kill you with no blink of eye. But he told me, look, I'm defending my motherland. I said, I'm not worried about how many people you kill. What I'm worried about, you should listen to Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita and preach to people. Because I know, you're in circumstance, I'm not going to tell you, oh, don't fight, if it would be somebody else, this guy I'm not going to say. I know he's kind of will go that way. And he's that tough guy that will do this service. But I said, in whatever circumstance it is, as I remember you spoke with me about Krishna and Gita, I said, this is the most needed right now. So try to preach to people. And I sent him the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, because this is about war. So try to understand the purpose of the war. But see, that means at certain moment of our life, the reality within our theory will become in our practice. And we have to realize, how do we have to deal with this situation? How do we have to deal with this life situation? Should we go for the benefit of ourselves, or we have to sacrifice for the higher truth? And that will reveal who we are, not in our own estimation, in reality. And so that's called practicing life. And Gurudev many times talk about that. We try to preach and practice. And when we practice, it's not just, putting up tilak and dress. Otherwise, people have double life, here's my professional life, here's my spiritual life. Here I am here with tilak and dhoti. Here I am in my working suit. Once a week I become a Vaishnava. The rest of the time I do this. But that's not what real practice is. The practice is to continue your struggling, because remember, most people are struggling. It's so funny, in the Western culture, people struggle so much that you can't even say this to people. In our culture, if you say oh, fine, in Russian culture, you don't have to say I'm fine. Yeah, you can say I'm not fine. All right, what's happened? Okay, don't worry. Get some vodka. But in Western culture, you pretty much have to like, oh, I'm fine. Like you have to fake it to that level that you're fine. But we know most people are not fine. So I met one gentleman. They said, oh, this is Swami. And this guy, he born into, devotee families. And this person said, hey, I'm working with wheat. I said, oh, very nice. He started explaining to me. He said, oh, because wheat is very like this THC, CBD, they try to justify what he's doing. I said, look at all these people on this wheat party. They're pretending they're happy people. Every one of them has psychiatrists, psychologists. Everyone is psychologically damaged, and they will tell you that's the only way to do this because it's a painkiller. So I said, try to understand, this is a painkiller. And sometimes you need to kill your pain. But that's not what spiritual life is all about. So don't try to say, oh, this is equal to a meditation. Maybe some Mahabharata meditation. I would rather smoke. But, well, which is true. If the meditation means to knock you out, just take dope and be knocked out. People do this all the time because they can't stand reality. And so they do suffer. And they think somehow they will resolve their suffering. But we all know the only way to resolve any kind of suffering is to preach and practice Krishna consciousness, to engage in Harikatha and Krishna Katha and share with devotees. And suddenly, it says in Bhagavad, suddenly all your doubts and clouds will go away. Because your problem that you believe a problem will become a small thing. Because Krishna consciousness dealing with like mortality, beauty, you go above mortality and immortality, go to true love, true beauty, true perception. All these things are so amazing. So for the time you're on a program, you're fine. But when you get off the program, you start dealing with reality again. And you would think, oh, why is that so? When I was in Krishna Katha, I was so happy, and now I'm so unhappy. What's the nature of this world? But really the nature of this world to push you out of this world. This world is not meant to please and fulfill, and suddenly you have to deal with your own death and like disease and old age. And like I started realizing I don't remember certain things because my brain's been shot down to diabetes, but also I can barely walk sometimes. And Gurudev he also had a leg problem. He couldn't walk, so he had to ride a scooter. But once you stop walking, your health goes down more and more and more. So you kind of have to, do something. So, I was follow one doctor who explained exactly what to do if you want to live. And I understand, it sounds like Krishna consciousness, what he said. Because he said, if you go about diff numbers, you're done. If you go below that, you're done. But to keep that golden age, you have to do certain sadhana. He said, once you learn how to do sadhana, you can go on for a long time. Once you stop doing the sadhana, you'll go down or up, and that will be... So in Krishna consciousness also, it's like, if you do what is beneficial for Krishna consciousness, then you can go through the whole world of suffering, and most likely you're going to manage. But if you deny that recommendations, which giving us by saints through Krishna, then you'll have to suffer. And I understand, yes. I understand I'm suffering for certain things, which is, suffering is the best medicine. No pain, no gain.